courage. I question maybe his wisdom, but I certainly salute the courage he demonstrated by standing up to the authorities and saying, no, I'm not going to go along with this because it's wrong. And this is not what our country's about. So in a nutshell, that's what happened out west. But they just, people hit a wall, Joseph, and they just don't want to do this anymore.
Well, and I guess the point that I would make, Nick, in addition to everything that you've just said, is to point out what the ramifications are of government officials acting this way, as though the lives of every single person that were on that hockey rink were at risk. And, it's an overreaction, and I think that in the case of this fellow again in Wisconsin, he looks at this, he's not entirely balanced, he's, as I said, he's obviously has mental health issues, but all he can do is look at the example around him, and is anyone really surprised by the fact that he would be, deadly afraid for himself and for the safety of his family, and that somewhere along the lines that would add up, perverted though it is, as I have to kill these people to save them from this horrible virus. And Nick, the example of this fellow in Calgary it's not even the tip of an iceberg. Think about in Manitoba a couple of weeks ago, where the police were descended on a church service in a parking lot and broke up the service in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's right.
We're
outdoor church service.
Where members of the congregation were sitting in their cars, precisely because they wanted to social distance and be safe with their neighbors, and it didn't matter. The police still came in, broke up the service, and basically threatened to arrest people because it was an illegal gathering. And then think about communities that are setting up snitch lines, or that were setting up snitch lines and encouraging neighbors to monitor their other neighbors and to call in and report if their neighbors had more than the maximum number of visitors at their Thanksgiving dinner table. Or what about curfews? Here's another one, Nick. Curfews. Apparently, it's not enough to order restaurants and bars and other places where people might congregate after hours or later in the evening to close in those communities that are ordering curfews. Now they're saying people shouldn't even be allowed to leave their homes after dark without risking arrest. I mean, look at the kind of society that we're creating. So, when you think about it, yes, this fellow was mentally deranged. No question about it. But how many times, and, my wife has difficulty wearing a mask. So she's been in a few places where she's, had to pull it down to take a few breaths. She has trouble breathing through it, etc. And all she has to do is pull down and show her nose, and you're almost guaranteed that some mask vigilante is going to see her and chase her down and scold her in public and call in the authorities, etc. And we all know examples of this. We've all seen it. We've all heard it. And, Nick, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it's an extreme example, maybe not pleasant, but I can't help but think that people who are doing this kind of vigilantism, people who are not otherwise mentally unbalanced, but who've had this idea of fear hammered into them about how deadly this virus could be, even though it's not, that these are the kinds of people that would inform on their neighbors in Nazi Germany in the 1930s and 1940s.
Well,
I mean, it's a terrible thing to say, but it's. I feel like we're encouraging this kind of thing, and I'm surprised that we're not seeing more of the kind of deranged actions that this particular person in Wisconsin exhibited. I'm really quite surprised. I'm surprised we're not hearing about people physically attacking other people for not wearing their masks properly. Not even not wearing, not just that they're not wearing their mask, but they're not wearing their mask properly. And I think that the government, unwittingly maybe, but I think that the government is encouraging that kind of behavior.
Well, let me add one more quick little story. I was in North Bay, and I had a student. I teach young kids how to drive without getting killed and up to ministry standards, so that when they go to write their exam, or take their road test, I should say, they'll pass. And it's for a lot of these people, and when I say kids, I don't mean that every person that I teach is a child, but excuse me. But a lot of them are. You know, they're 19, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, maybe 20. And some of them are very good drivers. And I don't have much to teach them. On the other hand, some of them are scared to death. Up there last week was a case where I had a young lady, very, very nervous. Her palms were wet. She was just a bundle of nerves. And down the road from the drive test center where we were going to go and she was going to take her test was a Tim Hortons. So I said to her, let's go to the Tim Hortons and we'll get a coffee and just kind of, give you something else to think about. Rather than worry about this, it'll help you relax and you'll feel better about the whole thing. So we pull into the drive-thru. Now, the regulations state that I have to wear a mask, and so do they. Okay. So we pull up to the machine where you order, that screen there, and we're waiting our turn, and there's a guy sitting in a pickup truck facing the car, okay? And he pulls his camera out, and he takes a picture. And she said, what's he doing? Because she does not like having her picture taken without her permission in public. Now, whether I agree with that's not the point. The point is, it bothers her, and she's trying to get ready to go and get this test behind her. It's a major milestone in her life. So he does it again. Well, this time, she goes after him. She rolls the window down. Hey, bud, what's your problem? Well, you're not wearing your mask. She said, we are ordering from Tim Hortons. We're in a lineup. Oh, okay. But what he'd done, because he thought he knew better than she did what she needed to do in this particular circumstance, was completely undermine everything I was trying to do to get her to calm down so she could pass this major milestone in her life and get her driver's license, her full driver's license. Like, thanks a lot, bud. You have no idea the damage you just did, all because you think you know better than I do about whether or not she should be wearing a mask at this particular instance.
And in fact, she doesn't have to wear a mask at a restaurant drive.
Well, guess what? She failed. She was so wound up that she just couldn't settle down, and when she got into the car to take her drive test, she failed. Now, he bears a big chunk of the responsibility for her failure. I'm not going to blame it all on him. She still has, she still has been mature enough to deal with issues as they come along. But he didn't help the scenario at all. And I told my employer about that, and she said, you know something? Sometimes I could just bounce people's head off the pavement. Now, I'm not suggesting that we actually did that, but what business was it of that guy to actually take a picture out of the blue, real sneaky too. It's not like he held up and said, smile. He just lifted his cell phone, went click, and put it back down again, hoping she didn't see it. Then he did it again.
And this, of course, raises the question, what was he intending on doing with those pictures?
Well, he was going to call my boss and send off the pictures as evidence. He was a snitch. That's what the whole thing was about.
Well, all I can say is...
So I called the boss, told him what was going to happen, and headed off to pass.
All I can say is, Nick, be careful of this kind of society that you're creating. Okay, it is now bottom of the hour, so we're going to have to go for our last break. So we will be back. If you're listening to the live show, stay with us. If you are listening to the podcast, Part 4 coming up Tuesday morning on the Nick and Joe Show, episode 138 for December the 23rd, 2020, almost Christmas time, and we'll be back in a few minutes.